Hey, it's Steph. Thanks for watching today's video. I'm going to be doing an update to my Pan Those Eyeshadows Project Pan. This was created by Alexi, so I will link her in the description box down below. The way I've been doing this project is I've been randomly selecting 5 shades out of my whole eyeshadow collection and also selecting a focus palette that I just want to get a little more use on. My goal for the randomly selected shades is to hit pan, but if I don't do that in 20 uses, I have the option to roll it out. I have pretty sad numbers this month, and this is going to be my finale for this project, so I will get into that a little later, but let's get into the numbers. I always go in alphabetical order how they're listed in my collection spreadsheet, so actually, the first 2 shades come from my Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. I am working on the shades Cyborg and Teak. This is what Teak looked like last month. I had 6 uses on this since rolling it into the project, and I was able to use it 4 more times with a total of 10 uses. And this is what it's looking like. It is looking a lot more used, which makes me super happy. I am wearing this shade all over my lids today with other things topped on top. So those 4 uses includes today's use. Then the next shade from this was Cyborg. This is what it was looking like after 2 uses in this project. I actually had this shade in my project last year and I had used it 28 times. And this past month, I was only able to use this 2 times. So I have a total of 4 uses in this project this year, but a total of 32 tracked uses combined with last year's project. And this is what it's looking like here. Again, there's definitely some wear on it, but no pan. And I'm wearing this on the center of my lid. This palette is very fitting to its name. It's very sultry, it's very smoky and grungy, so I just did not want to reach for these shades. Again, I think I said this last update, but often I was so busy and rushing out the door that I just put bronzer in my crease, put some mascara on, and I called it a day. The next shadow comes from my ColourPop California Love eyeshadow palette. This is a really fun, like orangey warm tone palette. And I had the shade Diego. This is what it was looking like after 4 uses. And again, I only used this 2 times this month with a total of 6 uses in this project. This is what it's looking like now. There is a dent starting to form, which is nice to see. The next shade comes from my Hip.C Note palette, and this is what it was looking like last month. After 13 uses in this project, I was so bound and determined last update to get my 20 uses out of this, and I only used it once. So I decided to declutter that palette. My last video was a declutter, empties, and haul. And if you missed it, I did end up decluttering it. And so it's no longer in my possession. So I can't show it to you now, but one use probably doesn't look that much different than last month. And then the last shade that I have to share comes from my Sigma Cinderella palette, and it's the shade called Sweet Nightingale. This is what it was looking like last month after 15 uses, and I only had 5 more uses to hit my 20 use goal. Definitely was not going to hit pan on this shade. And you'd think, knowing that I only had to use it 5 more times, that I would hit it, but I only used it once. And this is what it's looking like. Probably no change at all. So as you can see, I have a pretty disappointing update, but I did get quite a bit of use out of my focus palette. I pulled the ColourPop Wild Nothings palette because this is a very summery color story. And I did get quite a bit of use out of this. My goal was just to use it because I hadn't touched it yet. And this is what it's looking like now. As you can see in these two shades particular, because they're so soft that you can see movement in them. But, you know, there's a little wear and tear on these shadows, and I was really happy with the looks that I created with this. I used this more than my randomly selected shades this month, which kind of opened my eyes to how I want to be using my eyeshadows for the rest of this year. I've mentioned quite a few times that I want to start using my collection as a whole and just get some use out of items that haven't really been getting attention. And even with all of the panning projects that I'm doing, I still have some products that have not been touched at all this year. And it's been 6 months and I want to fix that. So moving forward, I'm going to do a project that I've seen other YouTubers do. It's No Pan Left Behind. I'm going to work on eyeshadow palettes, and I'm just going to make sure that I touch every single shade in the palette at least once before I move on to another palette. And of course, I can work on multiple palettes at the same time, but I am going to introduce a few palettes that I think are appropriate for me to be working on at this time of year, and that I think that I would want to work on this time of year. So I have 4 palettes in front of me, and one of them is actually my California Love palette from ColourPop. I didn't really use any of the other shades in this palette, and that goes for like this past 6 months. I haven't really touched them. So I want to use every single shade in this palette except for this pressed glitter. I actually think I'm going to pop that out. I'm not a glitter girl. I just do not like how it gets all over the place, and I don't like having glitter that close to my eyes because when I do wear glitter, it gets in my eyes when I try to take it off, and that's just scary for me. I don't want it to cut my eyeballs. So I will be popping that shade El Capitan out, but I'm looking forward to using this really warm toned palette to see if I actually like it on my face. The second palette is my Mercury Retrograde from Huda Beauty. I got this at the end of last year, I believe, and I've only used it one time for one look. This is what it is looking like. Sorry, it's so reflective, but I think these shades are going to be so easy to use. I'm not looking forward to the blue shades because, as you know, I was just working on like a ton of blue shades in my Beauty Bay Bambi palette, and of course that Cinderella palette and that Sino palette. So I might hold off on the blue shades until like last minute, but I am really excited to get to know this palette a little more. And I'm just going to throw in my Bite Size eyeshadow palette from e.l.f. This is the Cream and Sugar. And as you can see, I've used this palette, but I haven't used it at all this year. And I would just love to get some more use out of it. It's a very neutral palette, so I know like for every day, this will not be hard. And if I'm just feeling really lazy, this will be my go-to palette. And just to get some use out of my eyeshadows instead of my bronzers on my eyelids. And then the last palette I want to start working on is also a neutral palette. This is my Morphe 9T palette. And I actually panned this last year and I hit 3 pans in it. As you can see, I've panned this shade, and this shade. But when I was working on these, I did not touch these shades at all. Like maybe once, maybe twice. Yeah. So I just want to pull this out. It's a great neutral palette. So of course for every day, I hopefully will use it. And I'm really excited for this new format. I have been pretty honest with you guys on how stressed I am with my life. If you saw my emotional breakdown in my haul video, yeah. So I'm excited to get use out of the palettes that I have and that I haven't touched. I am still going to be using my Cinderella palette because I have it in another project to use for 5 different looks. And I also have my Profusion Harvest palette that I'm using for 5 looks. So I definitely still have variety. But I think this format of just using like a whole palette for one look is going to be a lot easier for me than trying to mismatch random shades from a ton of different palettes, if that makes sense. Like my brain can't handle that right now. I know a lot of people look at makeup as a creative outlet and that they love randomly selecting shades, so it like challenges them, but I am just so burnt out right now. I can't handle that. And if you guys didn't know, I do interior design for my job, and that is like very creative. It's very admin as well. You'd be surprised, but obviously I have to make a lot of creative decisions at work, and I feel like makeup has turned into more utilitarian for me at this moment in my life. So hopefully I will start enjoying makeup a little more now that I have switched things up. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like panning and makeup content and you're not subscribed to my channel, I encourage you to do so. So I see you in the next video.